Today is Thursday, November 20th. We'll tell you who is facing fresh fallout from the Epstein files even before they're released. Also, we're talking about American officials' new 28-point plan for peace in Ukraine, just as Russia steps up the attacks. Plus, why a former Olympic snowboarder is now on the FBI's most wanted list, how a big tech company is calming fears of an AI bubble, and we have the highlights from the biggest night in country music. Those stories and even more news to know next. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in about 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Lacey Evans, filling in for Erica Mandy today. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. As promised, President Trump signed the bill to release the Epstein files, and Attorney General Pam Bondi confirmed the Justice Department will release them within the month. Remember, the bill passed this week does direct the DOJ to release all the files related to its investigation of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. But it also says the DOJ would still be able to withhold documents that would jeopardize an active federal investigation. And illegal child sex abuse material is also exempt. Still, the material released could shed more light on Epstein's activities and the powerful people he was associated with, including President Trump and former President Clinton. To be clear, just because someone is named in the Epstein files doesn't mean there's any evidence of them doing anything wrong. But many lawmakers still suspect the documents might actually expose other abusers. Already, the fallout has started for some of Epstein's contacts, including former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers. He announced he's now leaving his positions as an OpenAI board member and a Harvard instructor. That came after just yesterday, the university said it was going to be reviewing Epstein's relationship with Summers, as well as Epstein's ties to others at the school. And remember, many Epstein survivors have said they're creating their own list of powerful people they believe were involved in a sex trafficking scheme. To be continued. A Democratic congresswoman is now accused of stealing FEMA relief funds. Representative Sheila Shufurlis-McCormick represents Florida in the U.S. House, and yesterday she was indicted by a federal grand jury for allegedly stealing $5 million that FEMA apparently overpaid to her family's healthcare company. She's accused of funneling some of the money into her congressional campaign and the rest into her own personal fortune. So far, Shufurlis-McCormick hasn't spoken about the charges directly, but her legal team called her a committed public servant and promised to, quote, clear her good name. Already, Shufurlis-McCormick is under investigation by the House Ethics Committee, and she's facing a challenger in next year's midterms. The Trump administration apparently has a new plan to end the war in Ukraine. News outlets like the Wall Street Journal and Axios say the White House has drafted a 28-point peace deal that calls on Russia to stop attacking Ukraine and not attack any other European countries. But it apparently includes points Ukrainians have ruled out in the past, like giving up some territory to Russia, as well as some weapons. It also does away with the idea of a peacekeeping force to deter future Russian attacks. Because of that, it's expected to face strong opposition from Ukraine and other European governments. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky has spent the week visiting European capitals, trying to revive peace negotiations. And he's set to meet two top American military officials today. But the Russian attacks keep coming. In fact, yesterday brought one of the worst attacks on western Ukraine of the war thus far. Dozens of people were killed when a Russian missile hit an apartment building. President Zelensky also said energy, transport, and civilian infrastructure was hit all across the country. Earlier this week, Ukraine also announced that it used an American missile system to hit targets inside Russia. That's the first time the weapon has been fired on Russian soil since President Trump returned to office. Separately, members of Zelensky's inner circle are now being accused in a corruption scandal in which they allegedly took $100 million from a state-owned nuclear power company. And reports say this could end up being the most significant threat to Zelensky's power since Russia first invaded. Stay tuned. Today, Vice President Dick Cheney is being laid to rest. An invitation-only funeral service is being held at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. At least two former presidents have confirmed they'll be there. George W. Bush, who served 2 terms in office with Cheney as his VP, and Joe Biden. But President Trump won't be there. Trump and Cheney had a history of tensions, with Cheney calling Trump a threat to our republic during the last election cycle. Trump responded by calling the former VP irrelevant. Of course, Cheney will be remembered as one of the most influential vice presidents in American history who took a leading role in responding to the September 11th terror attacks. His funeral service is being live streamed on the National Cathedral's website, and news networks will provide broadcast coverage. The U.S. could be in for a rough flu season. The early data shows flu infections are still low, but rising in most U.S. states. And the dominant strain this year is H3N2. It's known to cause more severe symptoms than the strain that was most common last year, and that was considered an extreme season. Still, this year's flu vaccine is expected to help keep people out of the hospital. The Health Security Agency in Britain says this year's shot is up to 75% effective in children and 40% effective in adults. And it's not too late to get one. Meanwhile, COVID rates are rising in many states, but the rates of hospitalizations are very low. The CDC hasn't given a recent update on RSV, but other trackers have found rates climbing, with hospitalizations rising for kids under 5 years old. So health officials are advising people to keep their guards up and their hands washed as we head into the holiday season. More news is still coming up, but first, here's your main host, Erica Mandy, to tell you about our sponsor, BetterHelp.
It gets dark so early right now, and those darker evenings, plus all the things that can come up for people during the holiday season, it's important for all of us to check on each other this time of year. Send that text to someone you've been thinking about but haven't talked to in a while. Every time I think of someone or wonder how they're doing and then actually text or call them, I always ask myself why I didn't do this sooner. And that's often how it can feel after you go to therapy too. So yes, reconnect with those around you, and you don't have to wait for someone else if you could use a little extra support too. Reach out. BetterHelp therapists work according to a strict code of conduct and are fully licensed in the U.S. And they make it easier to begin by doing the initial matching work for you, though you can always switch therapists if you need anytime. This month, don't wait to reach out. Whether you're checking in on a friend or reaching out to a therapist yourself, BetterHelp makes it easier to take that first step. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/newsworthy. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/newsworthy.
Now, back to the news. NVIDIA is proving just how much the world is craving the computer chips it makes for artificial intelligence. The company announced that in its most recent quarter, its profit was nearly $32 billion. That's up 65% from last year and 245% from the year before that. That topped expectations, and it's a big deal since NVIDIA's earnings are closely watched as an indicator of the AI economy as a whole. Now, analysts believe these latest numbers could be enough to calm nerves on Wall Street, where investors have been worried about massive amounts of AI spending getting ahead of the demand, aka a potential AI bubble. As we told you, the tech industry is investing trillions of dollars in each other, mostly for big data centers all around the world. But at least for NVIDIA, it's paying off, and shares of the company rose nearly 5% in after-hours trading. The Louvre in Paris is now planning for huge security upgrades in the wake of last month's jewel heist. The head of the world's most visited museum detailed the plans yesterday that include a police station on museum grounds. 100 new security cameras are being installed by the end of next year, and anti-intrusion systems will start to be put in place within the next couple of weeks. There's also going to be a new security coordinator position. Already, a plan to modernize the infrastructure of the museum launched earlier this year and is expected to cost up to $933 million. At least 5 suspects have been arrested and charged in connection to the robbery at the Louvre last month, but so far, none of the stolen jewels have been recovered. There is now a $15 million reward being offered for the capture of a former Olympian turned alleged drug kingpin. Ryan Wedding competed for Canada as a snowboarder at the 2002 Winter Olympics, and now authorities say he runs one of the most prolific and violent drug trafficking organizations in the world. They call him New Pablo Escobar, accused of funneling massive amounts of drugs into the U.S. and Canada. Besides drug trafficking charges, Wedding is also facing charges in connection to the killing of a federal witness. He's believed to be in Mexico under the protection of the Sinaloa cartel, since he apparently worked closely with the group. And he is listed as one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. FBI Director Kash Patel now says the Bureau will be using its resources and expertise to find Wedding and bring him to justice. The International Tennis Hall of Fame has a new member. Roger Federer was elected in his first year of eligibility. Of course, that comes as no surprise to tennis fans who have been watching him for the last quarter century. He was the first player to ever win 20 Grand Slam singles titles, but Federer won more than 100 tournaments overall, and he broke many other records along the way. Now he's considered a model for younger athletes, including the current world number one, Carlos Alcaraz. Federer was actually the only player to receive enough support for the Hall of Fame's class of 2026, and he calls the honor deeply humbling. The induction ceremony is happening in August. Lainey Wilson was the big winner at last night's CMA Awards in more ways than one. The singer hosted, performed, and won Entertainer of the Year. Earlier in the night, she also won for Album of the Year and Female Vocalist of the Year. Other big winners include Ella Langley and Riley Green, who took home both Single and Song of the Year for You Look Like You Love Me. Vince Gill also received a Lifetime Achievement Award given to him by another legend, George Strait. Of course, there were tons of performances throughout the night from people like Keith Urban, Kenny Chesney, Chris Stapleton, Kelsey Ballerini, Shabuzi, and many, many more. The full CMA Awards are now available to stream on Hulu. That's it for the main news today. Now it's time for Thing to Know Thursday. But first, Erica is back to tell you about our sponsor, Hiya Health.
As a parent, I'm always trying to make sure my 4-year-old is getting what he needs. But let's be honest, most kids go through phases where vegetables and balanced meals aren't exactly the priority. And typical children's vitamins, they basically seem like candy in disguise. That's why I'm grateful we found Hiya. My son takes both the daily vitamin and the probiotic every day, and he actually gets excited about them. Hiya is formulated with the help of pediatricians and nutritional experts, and it's pressed with a blend of 12 organic fruits and veggies, plus 15 essential vitamins and minerals, and every batch is third-party tested. Also, if you're tired of battling with your kids to eat their greens, Hiya now has Kids Daily Greens Plus Superfoods, a chocolate-flavored greens powder designed specifically for kids, packed with over 55 whole food ingredients to support brain power, development, and digestion. Just scoop, shake, and sip with milk or any non-dairy beverage for a delicious and nutritious boost your kids will actually enjoy. And we've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/newsworthy. This deal is not available on their regular website, so go to hiyahealth.com/newsworthy and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults.
Now back to today's Thing to Know Thursday, all about cosmetic surgery. Business is booming for plastic surgeons these days, and there's a few different reasons for the trend. For starters, researchers say there's a clear correlation between the time people spend online and their desire for plastic surgery. There's also the surge of GLP-1 drugs that can help people lose weight quickly, only to be left with loose skin that can be tightened by a doctor. Also, procedures have gotten more advanced, so more people are taking advantage of faster recovery times and subtler results than in the past. And finally, surgeries have gotten more mainstream and less taboo. Celebrities and influencers are talking openly about the work they've had done, for better or for worse. But for all the people hopping on the plastic surgery bandwagon, there are also plenty of people who have decided to get off. Doctors around the country say they have seen an increase in patients looking to get their fillers dissolved, their breast implants removed, and so on. So it seems whether people are opting for surgery or not, the trend is a more natural look. Thank you for listening today. We'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.